Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name is Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be reviewing the latest film to come out in theaters, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. For anyone that follows the channel, we recently just released our Cinemasochism episode where Brian Michaels and myself talk about the last Dungeons & Dragons movie to come out in the theaters, which was the 2000s version, which was horrible. it was a really awful film. We talked about in that episode how Dungeons and Dragons itself, while popular in, kind of like a certain realm of parts of the world, basically your nerds, your geeks, your role-playing game fans, after 2000's Dungeons and Dragons film, it wasn't really much in pop culture, limelight until Stranger Things came back around and started to bring Dungeons and Dragons back into basically the stratosphere of everyone's, pop culture references. So, thus, this movie was made. It's directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. You may know them from Freaks and Geeks, or their last comedy they did together, which was Game Night, which I was a huge fan of. We talked about it on one of our episodes here. I think it was Movie Crusaders a couple weeks back. The main plot for Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic, but things go dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. Main thing, cast-wise, solid across the board. You got Chris Pine, who's for the most part good in everything he's in. You got Michelle Rodriguez. You got Regé Jean Page. I hope I said that right. From Bridgerton. Most people know him from Bridgerton. You got Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis from the It franchise, Hugh Grant, Chloe Coleman, and Daisy Head. Like I said, the cast for this movie, I think, all do a real solid job. Chris Pine's Edgin, he's your main lead. He plays I want to say it was a harpin or something like that. Trying to think of all the actual Dungeons and Dragons clans and classes basically from the movie. He obviously has had a lot of things happen to him in terms of choosing this life for him, such as losing his wife and basically making some wrong choices along the way, as well as with his partner / best friend Holga, played by Michelle Rodriguez. Their chemistry together as basically two friends, there's no romantic connections or anything. They are just two colleagues that are partners that work together, and I think Michelle and Chris Pine actually work really well together as a twosome. They got great banter back and forth. It's never, like I said, there's never a part of this movie that makes you feel like they're going to become a couple, and I actually liked that aspect. I liked that you could have these two basically just be buddies with each other and just kind of live their lives always having each other's back. Justice Smith plays Simon, the mage, who really lacks self-esteem and confidence. I think his performance is actually really solid throughout the film. He is still kind of stuck in this one little moment here from when he did Detective Pikachu, and then he also did a movie called, I think it was The Voyeurs. And one thing that was really weird about The Voyeurs is that his voice drastically changed, almost to the point where I thought it sounded like he was trying to put on a bigger voice, and it just sounded off and weird. And in this movie, Simon's character, or at least Justice Smith's version of Simon, kind of fluctuates in and out of that, which is kind of annoying, but for the most part, I actually think this is actually one of his better performances he's done, probably since Detective Pikachu. I think the magic side and his kind of backstory of why he lacks self-esteem and kind of how he grows through film, I think is actually relatively solid. Hugh Grant plays Forge. He's basically kind of like the con man you don't trust. Hugh Grant's really good at playing these kinds of characters. He's played these characters before many times, and he does not ever fail that assignment, and he's pretty solid in this throughout. I do wish Hugh Grant did get a few more scenes in this film to establish his character a little bit stronger, or at least to kind of take a break in the middle of the quest to go, hey, let's see what's going on with Forge in the movie. With him and Sophina and Kira, those characters I think needed a few more scenes just to make their characters a little bit stronger throughout the overall film. To me, one of my more MVP performances of this movie actually goes to Sophia Lillis as Doric. She's kind of I know I'm not using the right term for Dungeons & Dragons, but she's a shapeshifter. She can basically change into any kind of animal, creature. Her first scene was a little rough because it seemed a little melodramatic, but as the movie went on, I thought her performance got stronger and stronger as it went. I actually really enjoyed her performance and her character throughout. I think she meshed well with the rest of the clan, especially with Simon's Justice Smith. Regé-Jean Page, who plays it's an X name, so Denik. I don't know. I'm probably saying that incredibly wrong. He plays this kind of stoic character with this big lengthy backstory. I'm not the biggest fan of this guy's performances and stuff that I've seen him in previously, but I actually thought he was relatively solid in this film. While on screen with the clan, I actually really enjoyed his presence. I thought he meshed really well with Chris Pine, because he probably has most of his speaking lines with Chris Pine, and I think they actually had a really good rapport with each other throughout the film. Chloe Coleman plays Kira, Edgin's daughter. Her performance is probably one of the weaker ones she's done in previous films that I've seen her in. It's not bad, it's just I know she's capable of doing better than that. But she's not given enough time to really sink her teeth into this role as much as I would like. Daisy Head plays Sophina. She's this sorceress who's with Forge throughout the film. I think she does a solid job. Once again, not given enough screen time to really make it, matter. But I do wish we could have got a couple more scenes there, because she was definitely a really intriguing character throughout the film. The actual plot and the story, it's a solid plot. It's a solid story. It's not something that's going to blow you away. But one of the things that I actually did really appreciate and did really like about the film is that when the movie needs to be clever and come up with ways to get themselves out of certain situations or come up with plans to do certain things throughout the film to move the plot, I think the directors and the writing team actually come up with really unique, fun ways in order to make this happen. There was quite a few times while watching this movie that I literally kind of did that was actually pretty good kind of thing. There's some great banter back and forth, little like kind of one-off lines that are kind of said like under their breath that are actually some good funny moments. When the jokes land, they are incredibly funny. When the jokes don't land, they're still solid, but they're not like laugh out loud funny. The action kind of comes into where I think the big problem with this film is, and it's not that the action's not bad. I think the action is fine. I think the final third act is probably the best action that we got through the film, outside of a sequence with a dragon in about the second act of the film. I think both of those scenes are worked really, really well. They're fun, they're exciting, and they're doing exactly what you want out of a Dungeons and Dragons movie. Is it makes it feel like the actual role-playing game. My main problem with Dungeons and Dragons, like I said, I love the way everything looked. I love the cast. I love the plot, dialogue. I think everything works in that respect. But for some reason, the way this movie was shot is really the big weak link in this film as a whole. I don't know if they were trying to make this film for 3D, but then decided to bail out of it, because I know there is no 3D showings of this film. But this movie seems like they were shooting this with the intent to release it in 3D, but never fully went full-fledged with it. There are shots in this film that are just, it's hard to explain for people who don't kind of know how to look for it, but there's these large sweeping shots that are supposed to be used for depth, which in a 3D film would look cool, but in a non-3D film, it just seems annoying and unneeded and kind of a waste of film. The transitional shots for going from one scene to the next are just kind of off-putting and very just kind of blah. The best way I can describe that is for anyone who's ever watched the original, or not the original, but the prequel Star Wars trilogy, how they kept kind of doing like a pan to like swipe, like a pan swipe to like transfer to a new scene. This movie doesn't do that, but it's just every transition to a new scene just kind of felt off and almost kind of awkward. There's a lot of camera shots that are just either really up close that really need to kind of pull back a little so you can see more of the action, especially when Michelle Rodriguez's Holga is fighting. They always keep the action really up close and really kind of quick and jaggedy, probably because they're using stunt work for her during those fight scenes. But it's very hard to kind of see the action, and it's very just annoying in a way to watch that movie overall. Now, when you go to the big final third act or the dragon battle in the second act, it's shot exactly the way it should be. It's actually really well done. But up to that point, a lot of scenes, just whether it's them walking on a hill or whether they're just going from one location to the next or even just transitioning to a different part of the film, it was just annoying in how they did it. And like I said, most people can watch this movie and not notice those things and not see this problem that I was having with the film, but it really was rubbing me a wrong way for at least the first 2/3 of this film. And that was really, to me, what really kind of hurt this movie from being just a decent film and a decent attempt at the Dungeons and Dragons franchise to something that could have been actually a surprise favorite for the year. Like I said, nothing against the cast and crew. I think they all did a solid job. It is more the way they did this, the camera direction and how they did the transitioning of shots and scenes that really kind of made this movie drop down quite a bit for me. If you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, definitely, I recommend checking this out. I do like the film overall. It just had some nitpicks in there that really irked me while watching the overall experience. I think if you guys are a Dungeons & Dragons fan, I think this is the best version of this that you're going to see out there. I think, like I said, the casts are solid throughout, and I think the action sequences, at least the two big sequences that we get in the film, are enjoyable and fun to watch overall. So for me, I'm going to give Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves a 74%. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, follow us on all those social media outlets you see below. Out right now, Cinemasochism's episode of the 2000s version of Dungeons & Dragons is out right now. As well as coming out tonight will be our episode of the Weekly Crusaders, where Brian Michaels and myself talk about 2 movies that came out during this week in movie history. Next week, we'll have a new episode of the Weekly Crusaders and Cinemasochism, where we will be talking about the 1993's version of Super Mario Brothers, as well as having reviews for Super Mario Brothers and Air that come out next Friday. So be on the lookout for all these videos. And until next time, in case I don't see you, watch the movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.